Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to show you how to instantly get better at mixing your beats. It's really simple. It comes down to 5 letters: A, B, C, D, and E. A stands for amplitude, B stands for bass, C stands for contrast, D stands for dynamics, and E stands for the energy of your track. So let's first talk about amplitude. In short, most of the time when you guys are mixing, your sounds are too loud. So when you're first getting started, I recommend you turn up your headphones so that stuff feels too loud. It will force you to start turning stuff down. Go to your channel rack and just start turning down these channel volumes. It's important to use the channel rack volume or use the actual audio volume right here on the audio clip. If you guys are using your mixer fader, it's post everything, post effects and everything. You want to turn down your volume from the start because this is the volume going into your compressors and everything else. All right, so let's turn down the volume. Well, we don't need to turn anything down here, but this is where you guys would turn that volume down. Next step is bass. So what I'm going to show you guys is the difference between a good track and a track that's not full. So here's before. This is when our drums weren't mixed. So just listen for. Actually, let me do it this way. This is more of a Jay Dilla style, but let's take out what's called the sub bass. So most people don't understand the importance of sub bass frequencies. So here's before. It's just the kick trying to carry all the weight of the track. Now let's turn on the sub bass here. And that simple layer of sub bass is what fills out the track. So sometimes we need to layer stuff underneath the kick in that 30 to 50 hertz range area to fill out the kick and make the beat feel a little more full. So when your beat feels empty, it's probably because you don't have enough bass information from about 30 to 80 hertz. So look at that area to add more information, more than just the simple kick. Okay, next thing we need is contrast. So I'll keep this analogy short. My son's over here making noise, if y'all are wondering. So we have what's called, an EQ. Okay, so on the EQ we have different, I call these critical bands. So here we have under 100 hertz. Okay, we have the bass frequency. Okay, and then under 1000 hertz we have our mid area, and then from 10K to 1000 we have the high frequencies. To create contrast, we need to be able to clearly hear sounds in each one of these frequency domains. So when you guys are picking sounds and you're categorizing your sound, think of sound as in subdomains of these 3 domains. It sounds simple, but when I have 4 bass sounds going, it gets complex. So sound is like people in a room. If you have big people in a room, they're going to take up more space. Okay, if you have smaller people in a room, those are like high frequencies in a room. Okay, so the trick is to fit people into a room without them clashing. And that's the art of masking, for example. Masking is when you have a bass frequency like a kick, for example, that's getting swallowed up by the sub bass because it's more dominant. Okay, because they're fighting for the same frequency space and one is louder. So we're going to perceive the louder thing as the thing that is more dominant over our specific sound. So in that case, we need to understand each subdomain. Okay, so that's going to be a huge thing when you guys understand mixing, is understanding subdomains to create contrast. Contrast is the ups and downs, the left and rights. It's the distance between stuff. So in order to create distance, you have to chisel out that distance. And that's the complex art of mixing. Now let's talk about dynamics. Dynamics is the ups and downness for the most part. If you struggle with dynamics, an easy way to hear it is to go to your master track or your submix mix bus, turn on where it says view extra volume and stereo properties, and then we're going to go to here to where it says stereo separation and pull this to mono. So now you're going to hear only one direction of sound, and because you only hear one direction, you're not hearing the sound go that way, that way, that way. It's confusing what up and down is. If up could be that way, this way, that way. So when it's mono, up is straight up and down is straight down. It's easier to hear the ups and downs of the beat. So as a beginner or intermediate, you guys can listen in mono to listen for the ups and downs of the beat, and you can hear dynamic way easier than when you're distracted by all the stuff on the side information. So let's hear what it sounds like in mono. Okay, so because the bass is just as loud as the kick, we're not getting a lot of ups and downness with the kick, but we are getting saturated full sound. So this is the line of like loudness versus dynamic that we're talking about in modern day music, but it has enough dynamic. If we wanted more dynamic, we would focus on the transients. I don't need to get too deep into the weeds about that, but the transients are the pointy parts in the beginning of the audio that makes it go up, and then the sound falls down like that. So that's a quick way to judge dynamic. The next thing is energy. Once I understood sound as a frequency map, let me show you guys something here. This plugin called Wave Candy in FL Studio. So if we turn this up, turn the color up, right click, make this spectrum mode. Okay, now we can see all the frequencies in this mix. Let me turn off some plugins here and turn this on. All right, so now we can view it in spectrum mode, and now I can see my voice is more than one frequency. So these horizontal lines are frequencies in a track, a channel. Okay, so when I'm playing a beat, it's more than one frequency. Now a sine wave is one horizontal frequency. Different waveforms have different stacks of harmonics they're called. So what separates a snare from a hi-hat is the frequency content of that sound. So let me show you guys the difference visually from where the drums were before. So here's before. I'll turn my mic off so you guys can visually see. To after is a little more yellow. It's a little more dense and full. We have more frequency content. In short, when we run our sounds to a saturator, we're adding frequencies to the sound. We're adding harmonics to a sound. In short, harmonics are multiples of a fundamental frequency of a sound. So every sound starts with a bottom note or a fundamental frequency, and then it multiplies itself throughout the frequency range spectrum to create unique sets of harmonics. Okay, you have odd harmonics, even harmonics, all types of harmonics. And when we combine those, we create the different timbre of each sound. That's what separates a sine wave from a triangle wave, from a sawtooth, from a pulse wave. We can all play the same note, but they all sound different. And the reason they all sound different is because of harmonics. Okay, so that's the simple explanation. So when we're adding, the way I think about saturation is we're adding frequency information to make something feel more dense. So that's what we did with the drums here. We're adding frequency content to fill out the emptiness of it. And that's what I call energy. How dense is our sound? So here's before, just as a quick recap. And you can hear there's more high frequencies, there's more mid information. The drums are a lot brighter. All right, so that's what I mean by the energy of a track. So to get that energy, sometimes it's compression, sometimes it's saturation. Let's go all the way back to the A. So it's A, B, C, D, E. Amplitude, which is just getting your levels right. Okay, now B is the bass. How much bass do you have to fill out the track? Most of the time, your guys' tracks is either way too much bass or not enough bass, and it feels empty and hollow. Thirdly, we have what's called contrast. So contrast is the difference between sounds. How do you create difference? You create space between sounds, and I talked about those subdomains with the EQ. Thinking about sound in 3 subdomains: low, mid, high. That sounds simple. Most people don't understand this though, because when you go into subdomains, now we're looking at it as its own frequency spectrum from 0 hertz to 100 hertz, as if that's high, low, and mid itself. And now we're trying to separate the sound in that frequency range, and then making sounds trade for other sounds if we need a side chain, and really complex stuff we get into. But to understand that, we need to understand wave cancellation, masking, and different other concepts. All right, so I'm going to end this video here, but basically those are the A, B, C, D's, E's of how to get better at mixing. Okay, amplitude, again, in the beginning, when you guys start mixing, turn your headphones up so that it forces you to go to the channel rack and turn stuff down. Do it in the channel rack or directly onto the audio clip, because when you guys are turning your volume down from the mixer, it's after all of the effects. So it's pointless if you're using a compressor, saturator, because you're driving too heavy into those plugins by default. And also the bass even though you guys have kicks and even, you know, some bass lines, it doesn't mean you have that sub bass that fills out the bottom end of the sound. So if your beats ever feel hollow, look at the frequency range from about 0 to 80 hertz to fill out your track. And then we have contrast. What is contrast? Like if you had to define contrast, it's a difference. It's left, right, it's up, down. An easy way to determine contrast as far as your beat is to understand. All right, so when you guys think of contrast, think about opposites, separation of things. That could be gaps in the bass, that could be separation of sounds in the frequency spectrum. It's just distance, perceived distance. How do you create distance? There has to be a separation between this point and that point. If there's no separation, it's all deemed as the same thing, and there's no movement of back and forthness. That sounds simple, it's way more complex. Now, when you guys get into dynamics, the easiest way that I found to judge the groove of a track is simply pull your master channel or mix bus to mono. In FL Studio, you have to turn on what is called View Extra Volume and Stereo Properties. Turn this stereo separation knob to merged. And then you'll be able to feel the beat a lot more, because now you'll be able to hear the ups and downs of the audio as opposed to all directions. And lastly, to understand energy is to understand the harmonics of a sound and how sound is built. All right, so harmonics is this multiplying a sound, usually through saturation, compression, limiting. That's how it creates new frequency information. So that's what I mean by energy. So low energy is not a lot of harmonics. High energy is a lot of frequency content. And I'll show you guys a quick last example here with Serum, for example. So again, like I said, what separates the sine wave from the triangle wave from the pulse wave is the amount of harmonics in a sound. I'm just going to visually show you because it's too much really to go too deep with. Okay, so let's switch this to basic shapes. Let's edit this. So, you know, the first fundamental frequency, let's turn this off. On my MIDI on. Okay, boom. So this is a sine wave, just the first harmonic. Okay, now as I add the second harmonic, we're now adding a completely new note, a new frequency to the sound. Okay, if I add the third harmonic, we're adding another completely new note. So if I add more and more harmonics, we actually are adding frequency content. Now, why is that important? It's because the sine wave, if you guys want low energy tracks, you would just focus on chiseling out the harmonics, removing stuff to get that sub bass smooth sound. If you wanted a brighter EDM type sound, you would add harmonics because now we have more frequency information to fill. And even still, let me show you guys on the front panel here. Okay, so, and what is noise? Think about noise. Noise is pretty much every frequency happening at the same exact time, just on a different curvature. So here's white noise. Okay, let's go to here, analog. Now let's look at noise on the actual spectrum here. Let's turn this on. So noise is really all of the frequencies happening randomly. Okay, now if I showed you guys the sine wave. Now this sine wave is analog, so we need to switch this to here. It's too much to teach you guys, but a sine wave is pretty much a horizontal line. Okay, now if I switch this waveform to a triangle, we're gonna get more harmonics in this case. Okay, so now you might have harmonics going up to 15K. What if we switch it to a pulse wave? We get more gappy harmonics. What if we switch it to a sawtooth? The harmonics are more tightly together. Okay, so that's the difference between sound is the harmonic content. So if I wanted a bright, big sound, I'm gonna increase the harmonics, and we could do that through saturation, compression, limiting. If I want a darker, softer sound, I'm going to pull away the harmonics with EQ, low pass filters, different things like that to muffle the sound. And that's what I mean by energy of the track. Okay, so it's a lot to go through. Hopefully you guys didn't get confused. Share this with a friend. Subscribe if you're new. If you want to learn mixing from the ground up, look for Mixing Fundamentals at busyworksbeats.com/premium. That's our best course for mixing to start you from beginner, knowing nothing, to actually being pretty decent. Go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. Peace out, guys.